There's a point in every gamer's life where the thrill of easy victories, bullying children who started gaming 5 minutes ago, and the monotony of walking through stories with your brain completely turned off just doesn't cut it anymore. At that crossroads, I suppose the best course of action is to do something meaningful with your life. Have kids, educate yourself, perhaps join a group of monks. Boring. Real gamers choose excruciating pain by way of experiences that hate you and want nothing more than for you to cry yourself to sleep after spending 5 hours getting obliterated by a monster. I'm looking at you, Scarlet Ho. The Souls-like genre of games is what I'm talking about. In particular, a new title called the First Berserker Khazan, Korea's anime version of Dark Souls, which is in nearly every respect identical to games from their close-by neighbors in Japan, From Software, the company that created the genre. I always like to pretend I'm good at these games, so to convince you of that lie, I'm gonna review the First Berserker like I know what I'm talking about. First off, the game has as much animosity for you as any other. Enemies hide out of sight that you wouldn't be able to know about. Traps galore disguised as sweet items. Enemies standing around in the exact right way to make it more difficult to fight them. An archer, he's always going to be far away so he can snipe at you while his friends spank your ass. The game has pretty much everything needed to be properly called a Souls-like, but it does come under a AAA price tag, and that might not be for you. It really depends how much you're acclimated to the genre. On one hand, I could sing praises about its combat, which with snappy parries and awesome abilities makes it unique. On the other hand, there are a few nitpicks I could list off. Enemy types aren't exactly the most varied. Lizards, spiders, skeletons, and maybe a real person here or there. There's also this testicle monster, which, was fun. What? They attack similarly and more often than not, the gank approach is what they use. In other words, attack in number and at all sides unless you space them out. Remember about 5 seconds ago when I mentioned the whole archer debacles? That's every single group fight. I hope you enjoy it. The reason I mentioned being acclimated to the genre is if you're any good at all, you're gonna be running through a majority of the game, except for maybe boss fights or when it's directly screwing with you. In opposition to a game like Elden Ring, for example, the big-ass tree you have to descend to get to Millennia is almost as difficult as the boss fight itself. That's a lie, she's like 7 times worse, but shut up. Here, I can destroy an entire army getting to the boss room only to get my cheeks clapped over and over and over again because he's the only person here who is any good at anything. I hate this. Incredibly difficult boss fights are totally 100% fine, but if you spend 90% of the game time in them, it's gonna make you wanna die. Now, to be fair, there is a quote-unquote bonfire outside of every boss room, and you have the added benefit of being able to reacquire your lost points, plus you even get more every time you lose. I can't say it matters all that much if you die for 30 minutes straight and then get to add 3 points of damage for a level up, but you know, it's nice. There's only a couple other negatives here that I will bother to mention. The First Berserker is not a completely linear game, but it is almost a straight line besides some side quests, and occasionally areas are straight up reused, especially in the side quest areas. Now onto the purely great things about the game. When the combat works and you're in the zone, it's immaculate. Hitting a perfect counterattack, then beating a disabled boss like a 7th grader would a toddler is always satisfying. The sheer versatility in what seems like a limited set of 3 weapons is actually quite far-ranging. I started with the dual wield, but fancied myself a big stick sort of man later on. Each type of weapon has an expansive skill tree that lets you tailor it to your own liking. When it comes to the design of the world or the different interior areas, you're not gonna find anything like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, where you marvel at the architecture that must have been made by some sort of schizophrenic genius on crack, but at least I find myself getting a kick out of a few of these areas. The medieval anime setting does look quite pretty at times. Gear and weapon variants are as you would expect. Cool items with random RNG effects aplenty. Particular armor sets go together with particular weapons, and that is pretty cool, but sometimes you're gonna be stuck choosing matching gear that you don't really like the look of, but helps your weapon or your playstyle. The hub world that you use to travel around the map is a nice touch. Once you have them unlocked, all the merchants attendants are nearby and you can quickly peruse whatever they can do for you. Scrapping items for points or materials, craft and upgrade gear, and there's a couple beautiful ladies that won't mind if you stare for just a bit too long. So now that I've gone about proving my elite gaming prowess and my ability to form sentences, we could get to the end of this review. Well, if the original SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom was a 1 on the Dark Souls scale and Elden Ring was 10, this is like a 7. If you like the genre, don't hesitate to pick it up on sale. On the other hand, if you positively love Souls-like games, I'd buy it right now. It's not gonna disappoint you. The only thing that's gonna do that is yourself. Damn you!